All right, we're live, or we're recording. We're not live yet.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our community information session featuring the Scholar Studios. We're going to let our attendees come into the Zoom, and we'll get started momentarily. Just want to make sure, again, that everyone is able to get in. Again, welcome. We are happy to have you here this afternoon. We'll get started in just a moment. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Scholar Studios Community Information Session about our newly reimagined Scholar Studios programs, hosted by the Office for Community Engagement. This innovative program, formerly known as the Career Learning Centers, or CLCs, offers high school students in grades 9th through 12th the opportunity to explore career pathways aligned to their interests and passions. I'm Daphne Kaiser, Assistant Superintendent for School Community Engagement, and your moderator for this event. During this afternoon's session, Ms. Megan Maynard, ACPS Curriculum Coordinator for Career and Technical Education, and Mr. Blaine Lay, Business Partner for CURE, will share with you how the Scholar Studios integrates academic learning with career exploration, providing students with the skills and knowledge they need for a successful future. Our goals for this session include providing information about how to select a studio that matches students' interests and how to enroll in a gateway course. We will also give details about the pathway sequence and tailored courses. We'll discuss the senior year capstone project and share opportunities for hands-on learning and work and community-based experiences. And then also we will give information to our students and our families about opportunities to earn industry-recognized credentials, as well as a chance to pursue the Virginia Department of Education Seal of Biliteracy. The Scholar Studios program provides a collaborative learning environment featuring 14 specialized studios that students can choose from. This provides students with challenging academic content while gaining hands-on experiences in real-world career fields. This afternoon, in addition to having all of this information, participants will be able to ask questions at the end of the presentation part of the session. Today's agenda includes a welcome from Dr. Irizarry, Director of Equity, School, Family, and Community Relations, an introduction from the moderator of our panelists who will be presenting and participating in the question and answer part of the session, presentation from our esteemed panelists, question and answer session, and then Dr. Irizarry will close out our time together with final thoughts and next steps. We really appreciate your time this afternoon to be with us. Now we'll turn it over to Dr. Irizarry for the welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Kaiser. This is one of the topics that we have received a lot of questions about. So with every one of our community information sessions, we always start with our strategic plan. And we always want to highlight our strategic plan moving forward. Our mission is working together as a team. We will end the predictive value of race, class, gender, and special capacities for our children's success through high-quality teaching and learning for all. We seek to build relationships with families and communities to ensure that every student succeeds. So if you take a look at our strategic plan and you look at our goals, this is really housed right under our Thriving Students goal. And Objective 3 and Strategy 1, ACPS will develop learning pathways that align with Virginia's career clusters with exposure to career pathways beginning in elementary school. So during today's presentation, we're going to be talking about a few different items. We're going to be talking about our, whoops. Oh, can you go back? Well, there we go. Here are the questions we're thinking about. How do we leverage student interests and their personal vision in their future to improve their engagement with school? How do we prepare students for multiple launching points after high school? And how do we partner with families and community partners through the pathway exploration with intentional touch points to support our students and meet their goals. And we have two incredible people here to talk about how we are moving in that direction. So I'm going to turn it over to Megan Maynard and Blaine Lay.
Thanks so much for that introduction, for getting us kicked off. I'm really excited to be with everyone today. We are excited to share with our community, and I just want to start out by saying this is a part of a bigger conversation. This isn't the only time that you'll be receiving information. We'll be continuing to share information out with students, families, and staff over the next several months. So feel free to add questions to the Zoom as they come up. We'll be addressing many of those today throughout our frequently asked questions session. And we continue to learn from students and families what would be helpful information. And so as we continue with future information sessions and future resources that we build out, knowing the questions you have will be really helpful to us. In addition to that, it would be great to learn a little bit more about who's here in the room with us. So if you'd like to share the grades or schools that you are connected to with students, that would be great to get a better sense of who's here with us today. And without further ado, we'll get started. A little bit about kind of how we got here. So several years ago, our school division started to think about how do we alleviate some of the pressure on one of our oldest high schools, Albemarle High School, and asked ourselves kind of the question that many folks ask themselves with regards to, do you build a new high school or expand one of your existing schools? And one of the things that we started to look at is how do we give access to all students in our division exciting opportunities to participate within the center model. And that kind of moved us into the center model that we've been in for the past couple of years. We piloted out what that center model would look like with Center One. And we piloted out career learning communities as a model of instruction starting just last year. And based on our feedback last year, we are now taking that feedback to think about what we might do differently as Center Two is opening soon. Some of the tenets of high school redesign are: how do we leverage student interests, talents, and goals to engage all students in innovative, rigorous learning experiences that would prepare them for success in high-demand post-secondary fields? There are a lot of components to high school redesign. You can see some of those here on the screen today. One of them is the Scholar Studios, and we're going to spend the majority of today really diving into what the Scholar Studios looks like. Some of our design, of course, is based on the data that we're seeing. And when we look at our data of our alumni, about 75 to 80% of our students after graduation do head into some type of an institute of higher education, but only about 46% of our students end up completing some type of a degree, whether that's 2 or 4 years. And so when we're looking at our alumni data, that helps us think about how do we prepare students for the future. And that data has been consistent over time as you look across the several years of data here. We're also paying attention to how students engage in school. And so when you look at engagement in Albemarle County schools as compared to the national average, and this is the national average of other schools who are giving the Panorama data, so not all schools participate in the Panorama survey. But when you look at that, you'll notice that while it is developmentally natural that some students might be less engaged over time, and that pans out in our national data, here in Albemarle County Schools, we're noticing greater disparity in engagement at the middle and high school level. When we dig into that a little bit more, you can see some of the aspects of engagement and how that fits in across all of our various high schools. And if you start to look at what are the questions in the surveys that are kind of getting us around the engagement question, you can see that when students are asked, how important is it for you to do well, or how important is it for you to do well in your future, in your classes, our students know that it's important. They value education and they know that it will help prepare them for their future, but they are less confident that the things that they're using in school apply to their daily life and that they find them interesting. And so I think that gives us an opportunity to kind of think about how can we use that data from our students to create more engaging spaces. When we ask students about their interests, and originally with the career learning community model, you can see we had actually a majority of students who felt that this would be the type of model that they would be interested in. So about 75% for the past 2 years. And that data is coming from our freshmen. So it helps us as we're thinking about high school. That data kind of helps us to remember that high school is not the finish line. As much as graduation is the end of a journey, it's really the start of what's next for our students. And so how can we think of high school as really a preseason training for their future? And as we know, the future is not clear, right? The future is constantly changing, it's dynamic, it's adaptive. And so we need to make sure that we're preparing students for experiences that are adaptive as well. When you look at some of the careers with the highest growth in Virginia right now, some of these didn't even exist when I was in high school. I went to Albemarle High School about 20 years ago, and the web was just introduced at that time. And so now there are entire fields, and some of our most in-demand jobs are in those areas. We want to make sure that the educational experiences that our students are engaging in are helping to prepare them for these high-demand fields as well. So as we mentioned, last year was our first year of piloting the CLC model, the Career Learning Community Model. So it gave us a good opportunity to get feedback about that model. And that feedback helped lead us to our redesigned Scholar Studio model, which we'll be sharing with you today. You can see some of the feedback that students shared with us, how important it was for them to have clarity, how important it was for them to have a sense of belonging, for them to feel affirmed in their choices, and to feel included, despite maybe traveling in between schools, to really feel like staff and families were aware of the challenges that they face. We also know that a career academy model is a common model of education throughout the United States. About a third of all US high schools do have one. And so we have lots of resources that we can use to help support best practice. When we kind of took some of those criteria and looked at our career learning community model, it helped us to identify some areas for improvement as we looked into the Scholar Studio. And so hopefully you'll see some of those as we share today. We also have an interdepartmental scholar steering team, which helps us collaborate across departments to implement high school redesign, to be proactive about the daily challenges that our students and teachers face, and really to develop a sustainable support structure as we are getting ready to launch Center 2 soon. And most importantly, to be sure that we're removing barriers with the goal of increasing enrollment access and success. So that gives you a little bit of background on kind of our history of where we started and where we are headed next. And I'm going to pass it off to our partner, Blaine Lay, who we've been working with for really about the past 6 months to kind of listen to the community and get feedback on what would be best for the future of our program.
Yeah, thank you. Well, first of all, thank you all for having me. It's great to be with you virtually, wherever you find yourselves today. Very quickly, just by way of introduction, my name is Blaine Lay. I'm a partner at Cure. We're a communications, marketing, brand strategy firm. I believe in what you all are doing at ACPS. My mother was an educator. I was a public school kid. So this is work that we believe in, that we're excited about, and I'm looking forward to sharing a bit more with you as we walk through. So on the next slide, Megan's start with the data is really helpful because I think it lays out just what a lot of students are interested in, which is really more authentic experience. And this is from Adam Grant, who says that a lot of evidence shows that this wellspring of intrinsic motivation is having the freedom and opportunity to explore our interests. What does that mean? As we think about the ways that engagement has declined, and even in seeing in the data that students are actually interested in spending their time during the school day pursuing interests that are actually intrinsically interesting to them. And so as we've been thinking about the good work that's happening inside of these career learning communities. How do we continue the good momentum that's already begun, particularly just to engage students and help think through not only what's happening in 10th grade, but what's happening when you're 40, when you're 60, and how can we design a high school experience that's just more intrinsically engaging. And so on the next slide, just a snapshot of what this is about. It's really about putting students at the center, really about engagement. If there was a single word that I could use, it would just be like, this work with the career learning community is now called the studios, is really about engagement. How do you help someone who is on the pathway from becoming who they are to who they might be, in designing an experience for all students, regardless of where you're from, what you're interested in, to give them different pathways to say, hey, this actually might be something that's interesting to you. What would it look like for you to opt into a different kind of experience? So it's really about engagement, and then the work that we've been doing to complement the really good work that's already been happening at ACPS is to just build awareness, to have events like this, to kind of get the word out about the new work that's happening related to the studios. I want to give you just a little bit of background on how we got to where we are, and then we'll eventually get to some visuals, but I wanted to peel back the curtain a little bit and just say, well, how did you get here? And I think it really starts with community input, right? Like, we've had a lot of conversations like this. We visited classrooms, all the comprehensive high schools. We've talked to, just all different kinds of stakeholders along the way, really making sure that we just have a really clear line of sight and understanding what is it that the community needs, what is it that families are looking for, what is it that students want, how does this impact administrative staff and teachers at the school level. So we've walked the hallways. I've been in rooms at each of the high schools in many different CLC studios, where you have some students that are raising their hand and are very eager, and other students that have their heads on the desk. And so I think it really gave a lot of context when you actually see and experience what it's like for a student in real life, in real time, for all different kinds of students in different schools and different classrooms that have different backgrounds. And we also reviewed a lot of the data that Megan's already shared around student interest data, survey work, cluster data, all those kinds of things, to say we really want to make sure that we have a well-rounded perspective as we think about complementing the great work that ACPS has already begun, and thinking about designing an experience that's more compelling for a high school student. So what did we find out? Great question. I want to talk a little bit about what motivates a student to sign up for one of these pathway studios, and then what are some of the barriers. And so I think to take the first one on the motivator side, the first one that we heard a lot about is just an interest in and a passion about the subject matter, whether that was healthcare or STEM or environmental science. Students that opt into these programs have an intrinsic interest and they want to spend their time there. So that was the first one. The second one is, I'll call it the how of learning. So I think the idea that it's practical, it's experiential, it's hands-on, you're meeting with folks in the community, that it was the how of the learning, that it was, and a lot of it was authentic, that the things that I'm learning aren't abstract, but I'm actually learning skills and doing it in a context that actually are mimic or sort of mirror what happens in the real world. Thirdly is, I'll call it the community, just this cohort-based community model, that I'm with peers that are interested in similar things. I can tell that the person at the front of the room is engaged and they enjoy this topic. And so there's this real sense of togetherness, sort of a we community feel. And I think those three, if the first one's about the what and interest in the subject matter, the second one is about how learning is happening, and then the third one is about the who. Those three things together really are motivational for students. And then the last two, just the influence of peers and family. A lot of students opt into this because one of their friends is doing it, or they had an older sibling that did something similar. But just that influence of peers and family was influential. And then lastly, just the sense that inside of these studios, it may provide some opportunities to unique resources and those sorts of things. So that's just a snapshot of the motivators. I want to give you a snapshot of some of the barriers. And Megan can speak to a few of these in a moment, but a lot of the barriers, and potentially some of the questions you may have, were really around, I'll call it the logistics of how to actually bring this to life. So the first one that we heard was just I'll call it the social and academic separation, that if a student is leaving their home school and going to a different school, or if they're in a distinct academic program, there was just this sense of, is the trade-off of being a part of a different community, am I going to lose something by in some way not being fully integrated into the community that I know? So I think for students, we just heard different variations of just, I think, lack of, they just weren't sure of, like, is what's this going to feel like when I'm sort of separated or in that way. The second one was logistical and scheduling challenges. So when you think about things like transportation and schedules with sports, and how do they get from one place to the other, communication between a lot of times the base school and or the school where they might be during the day, just some of those logistical things that we heard needed some attention. And I think ACPS, which Megan can share more about, has been thinking really hard about how you can design an experience that addresses some of those things. Thirdly is just the academic rigor and the workload. Some students, depending on the student you talk to, some students were nervous that the workload was going to be too much. And I think other students perhaps had questions around whether the program is going to be rigorous enough. So in some ways, depending on who you're talking to, one thing that we heard is two ways of just question marks about the academic rigor. Fourthly, uncertainty and lack of information. So some students just said, hey, I'm not exactly sure what it is. So we're having events like this and conversations starting now and kind of going forward to really just educate people and families and help them to understand what this actually is. And then lastly, just concerns around flexibility and commitment, and will I have the time, energy, effort, in my academic schedule or otherwise, to take something like this on. So just a very quick snapshot of the motivators and the barriers. So with that said, let me walk you through, given that one of the barriers for students and families was uncertainty and lack of information, I'm going to give you a little bit more information about what we're actually talking about here. So the Scholar Studios, what is it? It's really aimed at giving you, the student, the chance to dive deep into a topic that matches your interests, along with the flexibility that makes it your own. So just at a glance, this is a program that is available for all ACPS high school students. The program offers 12 studios, which I'll share in a minute what those are, that give students in each one the chance to pursue a specific area of interest. It's a 4-year program, so it starts in the 9th grade, goes to 12th grade. And then lastly, each studio is focused. So there's a specific interest area that each one's focused on, but there's flexibility inside of each studio to modify that experience through a specific pathway. So there is the rigor and the focus, but also some flexibility inside of each studio to sort of chart out a path that makes the most sense, that's more interesting to you. Some of the benefits of the program, and think about this as, I'll call them short-term benefits. So if you were a student and you're 3 weeks into your studio, what do we hope that they would come home and say? The first one is focus, just this, I'm able to dive deep into an area that's interesting to me. This is something that I think about at night, on the weekends, and I'm glad that I get to spend more time during the day focused on it. Secondly is just community. So the chance to connect with students, teachers, experts that share your interests, just this sense of, these are kind of my people, that these other people are interested in something that I'm interested in, just that community feel. And then lastly are the hands-on experiences that help them to build confidence, build skills, and to almost like grow into the kinds of people who are able to tackle real-world challenges inside of a specific discipline. So you can think about these as, I'll call them just the short-term benefits that perhaps might be more relevant to a student. But then you say, okay, Blaine, that's great, I get that, but talk to me about like the long-term, 5 years out, 10 years out. What are the outcomes that these studios are aimed at? And there's 3 of them. The first one is personal growth. So we've been thinking a lot and talking about a lot about designing an experience that can help students grow more toward who they might become by building skills, building confidence, learning a discipline, but as they're going, they're actually learning pro-social skills and they're motivated, they're able to problem solve and collaborate. So for some of them, they may select a studio and that's what they're going to be working on. For others, and maybe they select a studio, but a lot of those I'll call them pro-social skills that they're building and learning, those are going to be immediately translatable elsewhere. So that, I think, the growth of each individual student will then translate into making them more attractive for those that actually want to go to a four-year college, that they'll have the experiences and the skills that are attractive. And then even beyond that, career readiness. So these studios will help students take practical steps toward their future. And each of the studios have been designed with growth industries in mind. So just a snapshot on some of the outcomes there. What I wanted to do, if you might be thinking, okay, what are the actual studios? So I'll give you a snapshot of them. So there's 12 of them. And each of them we have this debate. So the first one is focused on architecture, urban design, and building construction. That's a little bit of a mouthful. If you say to a student that's a freshman, hey, what program are you in? And they say, architecture, urban design, building construction, but I was also considering transportation, robotics, analytics, information, and logistics. Both of those were a mouthful. And so we've created almost these shorthand names where the architecture student say, I'm in Blueprint Studio, and the studio in transportation robotics could say, I'm in Nexus Studio. So we tried to create a set of names for each of these studios that describe the discipline of that studio. So Blueprint, obviously, there's a connection to building and urban design. Encore is about performing arts. Impact is global leadership, law, social justice. I won't read through all of them, but I just wanted to give you a sense. You can read on the screen here. We tried to connect the name in a way that alluded to what is happening inside of that studio without being overly descriptive. But then if you imagine on a sweatshirt or on signage in the building, you would have Blueprint Studio in big letters, but then right underneath it would say, it would have the moniker that modifies it. So you would see, Blueprint Studio underneath architecture, urban design, building construction. So just a snapshot of each of those studios. You can go to the next slide. We've got kind of logos for each of these. And in a second, we'll show you just some sample materials. So each studio has a unique kind of look and feel. And then what we've done, we've been talking a lot about, again, going back to this idea of putting the student at the center. We've been thinking about the journey from a student knows nothing about this or a family doesn't know very much to like, okay, now I'm aware. How do we help people consider to eventually engage and think about which studio might be right, and then eventually signing up? So I think, even the purpose of the call today is aimed at this, to try to help you have a better understanding of what's actually happening in these studios. And then just we're in the process now of really, I would say, building out both the physical marketing materials and communication templates. A lot of the work that we're doing is frankly helping the communication team at ACPS and teachers actually put the tools in their hands of counselors to help them to understand what this is all about. So working very closely with Megan and her team. So here's just a sample poster of what a student might see in a classroom, in the hallway at a school, where you walk by a big poster that says design your future, and then just have them ask, hey, what studio do you think might be right for you? And then they can, scan a QR code to go learn more. And then we've also been designing, like this next slide is a flyer, just a sample flyer for teachers that lays out what it is. On the right, you're seeing an actual sample, almost course sequence to say, okay, as you think about 9, 10, 11, 12, what are the schools that a student might take at their base school for these studios? What are those courses inside of this specific pathway? So this is the Terra Environmental Studio. And this mock-up here is a pathway around ecology and environmental management. This just gives you a one-page snapshot, if you're interested, to dive deep into what the course structure might look like over 4 years. So each of these, like as we speak, are being built out for each studio. And then lastly, just kind of some fun, we've been talking a lot, we've been calling it the hoodie test. So how can we have a lot of what we're describing be interesting, attractional, and engaging for a student. And so one of them was, if you had it on a sweatshirt and you saw a student walking through the hallway, would you know what it is? Would it be intrinsically interesting? So you're seeing, you're seeing the sweatshirt, you're seeing some signage of what this could look like in the school, and then even thinking through things like stickers. And there are ambassadors for each of these studios. And so, you could have a sticker that says you're an ambassador on a water bottle. But that is the snapshot of the studio model, just to give you a little bit of context for how we got here, what it is. Megan, I'll pass it back to you, but yeah, hopefully that's a helpful explanation. I'm sure there are a lot of questions, even just around some of the logistics and those sorts of things. And I know that there are probably people on this call, perhaps with children of all different ages. So yeah, that's Megan, I'll pass back to you if there are any questions or if you want to keep rolling. And I do need to drop off here in a moment, but thank you all for your time.
Thanks, Blaine. And we have shared just a little bit of information with you. We haven't quite got into some of the frequently asked questions yet, but do want to pause and kind of pass it off to Eric and Daphne, who have been moderating the chat, to see if we have some direction on what might be helpful as we begin to answer some of the questions that you have.
And thanks, Blaine and Megan. We have, there are a number of participants on the call that are asking about entry into the studios. Several folks have rising ninth graders, and they want to know if the students will be able to enroll for their ninth grade year. And then are students able to gain entry, as a 10th grader or 11th grader?
Yes, that's a great question. So the Scholars Studios as career learning communities were originally designed to start in the 10th grade, and that is how we ran the course sequences last year and this year. And students were able to start in 10th grade, and we did have a few who also started in 11th grade. Looking to the future, what we heard in the feedback from our students was that they really wanted a larger cohort feel. They wanted to have more classes together for that community that they really appreciate. And so we did move it back into the 9th grade year as an opportunity. So for next year, for current course registration, rising 9th graders and rising 10th graders, or current 8th graders and current 9th graders would be who we're targeting the program to. Now, every year we always do have individual students who reach out to us and they're like, I wish I knew about it sooner. Can you find a way for us to work this in? And the best thing to do there is to reach out to your counselor. Most of the time there is a way to connect you to the program and to the courses that you're interested in. So those are great questions. We do have kind of both the transition to our current sequence and the revised sequence. You can see what that looks like here. I put a few samples in so that you could see what it looks like between your studio programming and your base school. And one of the things I think that's unique about the Scholar Studios is really that because we're trying to address engagement, it's more than just your electives. What we know is our kids in their electives are super engaged, and they're looking for ways to continue that engagement throughout their program. And so what you should see here at the bottom in the sample course sequence for the studio courses is that you're also taking some of your core academic courses in your studio in that kind of focused community. And so I think that's one of the unique aspects of the program. I listed a few samples in here so you could see one of our really popular sequences is at Link Studio at Center 1 in cybersecurity. So you can kind of see what that looks like. Another popular one is the biotechnology pathway with Pulse Studio at Monticello. The engineering pathway with Solve Studio at Albemarle. And you can kind of see here a sense of where some of those studios are located. And related to that, let me add one more. Related to that, students and families often want to know, what does a typical day look like? And so in Albemarle County Schools, our high schools rotate between an A day and a B day. And so you would spend one of those days at your base school that you're districted to, and the other day at your studio location. And so this is an example of what that schedule could look like.
And Megan, along the same lines, we did have a few questions that are related to students testing out a studio or moving between a studio just in the future. Questions we had were one was general and one was we have two rising ninth graders. So would they be able, how would a student be able to move around through the studios if at all?
Yeah, so, these are elective programs and students can choose to participate. What we know about students along this journey is that it's really a journey of exploration and reflection. And so if you try a studio and you learn that this isn't for you, that's really good learning. It's great to have a sense of, what is engaging to you and what are the types of problems that you want to solve and how you want to spend your high school experience. So you can switch between, and we often do. We also often have students switch within a studio. So each of our studios have several pathways. And so students might say, well, I'm interested in science or I'm interested in medicine, but I'm not really sure which pathway. And so those gateway courses give students an opportunity to explore that a little bit.
Megan, there was a question about fine arts, performing arts. Is that part of the Scholar Studio?
Yes, we are excited to be offering Vivid Studio and Encore Studio, which will be our visual and performing arts. And we have really strong community in our visual and performing arts courses already. And we had a prior model called the Arts and Letters Pathway that was really successful and found to be beneficial by students. And so what we've done is we've worked with the arts team to think about what they would like to continue from the Arts and Letters Pathway and how can that be included as one of the studios. And so students are able to join either Vivid Studio or Encore Studio at each of their base schools. And that will be rolling out next year.
Can you talk a little bit about the registration process and when that will open for students?
Yes. Let me pull up some visuals there. So one of the things we hear a lot is there's a lot of great options. How do we decide? Or I know exactly what I want to do. How do I sign up? And one of the things that we did in our feedback with both teachers, students, families, and counselors was try to develop a registration timeline that we can both communicate, but also addresses some feedback we heard from students, which was they wanted to be more than just registering for courses. They wanted to feel elevated and they want to be excited about participating in the program. So you can see here kind of what that registration timeline looks like. It's in alignment with other programs that we have throughout our division. But in November, which is right around the corner, students will be exploring studios along with other course offerings and other programs through presentations that are held by counselors in their building, as well as through the middle school advisory and the high school seminar programs. Additionally, online, students can explore kind of on their own through School Links. We will be mailing out information to students and also emailing and sending information digitally, including some of the resources that our communications team and the Cure team have helped us to develop. We will also be, we're excited. One of the things that we heard from our students is they'd like to see the space. And so all of our 8th grade students will have an opportunity to tour both Center One and K-Tech this year in December. So that they have an opportunity to kind of get a feel for what the learning feels like in those spaces. Additionally, all of our high schools have a curriculum showcase night, and those are, I believe, the second week of December. But if you need the dates for those, you can look on your school calendar or reach out to us and we'll be sure to connect you with those. Many of our middle schools also have middle school transition nights that kind of occur around that same time. So we will be partnering ourselves from the division level, but also the teachers of each of the studios and their students will be attending the curriculum showcase nights to give information to students and families. And so you can ask the questions really directly to the students who are in the program or directly to the teachers. Course signups for high school, I believe, start at the beginning of December, and for middle schools start around January. And they don't finish until the end of February. So during that January, February time, students and families connect with their school counselor to ask kind of the individual personalized questions unique to their interests and goals. During that, we'll also be sharing out additional information. We plan to spotlight a studio a week throughout the months of January and February. And we plan to have a information night, both in person and Zoom in the January, February time. Our students' feedback was they did not want an information session. They said that's no fun. They told us to do it at Ignite Night. And so we're going to look at how we can do that. They mentioned maybe doing s'mores outside in January, February, and having some hands-on demonstrations. So we're going to work to live up to their goals for us. In addition to just registering for courses, since students did want to have a more elevated registration process, we are having students submit their preferences, and that will happen through School Links. We'll have more information coming to you guys about what that looks like. And those will be due at the same time that course registration is due. So students can do those preference forms on their own with their families, or they can do them with their counselors as they're meeting with their counselors to discuss the options that are best for them. We hope to kind of launch and announce all of their preferences with welcome to the studio communications and welcome to the studio boxes, and then making sure that counselors have time to coordinate with students and families for those course requests. So long story short, there's lots of ways students can get information and can think about the options available. They will sign up for courses in PowerSchool through the course registration process. And there will be a preference form where they can list their preferences.
Great. And Megan, I know you have more of the presentation, so why don't we keep going a little bit and we'll see if we can answer some of these questions through the presentation. And then if you have a question in there, we will get to it at another stopping point as well.
Great. I would say another thing that comes up often is in addition to where are the locations, where will Center 1 and Center 2 be located? So we'll kind of talk through that for a minute. So these are the current locations of the studios. And the plan is when Center 2 opens for the studios that were at Albemarle High School to shift over into Center 2 to alleviate some of that crowding that we know is at Albemarle High School. We are looking at enrollment data to see if it makes sense for any other studios to move. I know the Health and Medical Sciences Academy, the Health and Medical Sciences Studio at Monticello is really popular and it's a really high demand field. So one of the things that's been considered is, do we offer the Gateway course, the first year course at both Albemarle and Monticello next year? That way, when Center 2 opens, it would be a potential option for more Albemarle students as well. So I think that's something that we're considering and we'll keep an eye on as more enrollment data comes in. If you haven't got to visit Center 1 yet, Center 1 is kind of behind Costco, and a lot of people imagine it to be like Google headquarters. And if you visited here before, it is a little bit like Google headquarters. So it opened in 2018. There are 9 lab spaces and 3 pathways running at Center 1 with a capacity of about 240 to 250 students. Center 2 will be located on the Lambs Lane campus right near Albemarle High School, and that will serve about 400 students per day, so about 800 students total with the A day and B day options of how it's run. You can see some of the mock-ups of that space, and all of these are from the Center 2 website, which is linked here on the slide, where you can find more information about the Center 2 project. We frequently have questions about how transportation works for students who are transferring between two schools. And one of the things that's helpful when you're thinking about transportation is to think about the difference between our satellite service and our shuttle service. And so our satellite service is what we were currently using for the CLC model. It's also what we used for our prior academy programs. And with the satellite service, students are dropped off at a high school or middle school, their base high school, or the middle school nearby, and then they bus to the other location, and they do arrive on time for the start of the school day. The goal is for them to return to school, to their base school after school between 4:30 and 4:45 for their extracurriculars. We run a shuttle service for Center One, Community Lab School, and K-Tech. And the reason that the shuttle service is different is all of those programs are able to operate on a different bell schedule than our comprehensive high schools. They actually have a late start and an early release. And so students would ride their normal route from home to their base high school and then take a shuttle bus to these locations. They do return before 4 for extracurriculars. Looking to the fall of 2025, so next year, for those of you who are thinking about, is this a good option for me? When we look at those satellite stops, what we see in reality, even though our goal was between 4:30 and 4:45, many of the stops with traffic end up being closer to 5. So we think it's really important that we're transparent with families and communities as you're making decisions on whether this service would work for you and your family, that you have a sense of what do those drop-off times look like. So most of the drop-off times you can see would start around 8 a.m. at your morning drop-off location, and then you'd return to that location around 5. Looking to expand the satellite stops to add Lakeside Middle School, which tends to be a location that has had a lot of interest in this service. And doing that additional location next year would add about 20 minutes to a student's morning and afternoon. So you kind of see what that looks like. This gives you a sense of what the shuttle stops look like. And again, those students take their normal bus route to school for the shuttle stops, and they depart after school starts because they're arriving at a program for a later start each day. For some students, transferring between two schools is a great option. They really want to maintain their base school identity and then have an opportunity to participate in specialized programs. For other students, they've asked, is it possible for me to just switch schools? And Albemarle County does have a transfer request process that students can complete a transfer request form and request to go to a studio school full-time. When they do that, then they can take advantage of that satellite stop service through the alternate bus stop requests. If you are interested in learning more about what that transfer request process looks like, there is a website that is linked here on this slide, and you can learn more about the transfer request process. And this is a topic that we are considering as the steering team, the interdepartmental steering team. We're really looking at it because, as you know, Albemarle High School is full, and that is the school that has many of our studios. And so one of the things we're talking about is, what does that look like for families requesting that type of transfer? Our current process, students need, the application starts in April and students are notified in July. And so we're looking at, are those still the right dates for both staff and students to be able to make decisions for the following school year? So that's something that we're still taking feedback from families around that process. One of the things we hear from families and students is how can I learn more about the different offerings? And so I do want you to know that we offer touch points around career development from kindergarten throughout 12th grade to help students really develop an awareness of their personal strengths, interests, values, talents, as well as the different pathway options that are out there, including pathways that are in demand and high wage. We also make sure that students have an opportunity to explore those pathways through field experiences, through classes, and then to begin to be prepared for whatever their goals might be by developing some of those life-ready skills that Blaine talked about and that are in our Portrait of a Graduate, as well as to construct their own plan through a 6-year academic and career plan. And much of this exploration occurs in a program that we have called School Links. So I did want to highlight the School Links program so that you had a sense of how both you and your students can interact with this platform to help explore as well. You can see some of the different aspects that are available to students and their families in School Links. And I'm going to just showcase a few of those so that you can get a sense of what it looks like. So each student kind of walks through a process of setting their own academic and career plan that's based on their interests, their values, their skills, their favorited careers, if they're interested in a studio, and if they're not interested in a studio, what types of elective pathways they might be interested in, as well as all of their goals. They are able to take different interest assessments and skills assessments, and these they can take as many times as they want over time. One of the things that I really like about it and that I've seen students enjoy is they can actually see a chart of how their interests have changed over time. So it's neat to see from the time like a student is a 6th grader and first starts exploring until they move into kind of 10th and 11th grade, how some things stay the same and some things shift and changed over time. Students can explore pathways, they can look at in-demand careers, they can look at overviews of those careers and watch kind of a day in the life so that they can have some early exposure to some of the careers that they might not have experienced themselves. One of the things that I've found interesting, we've only had School Links now for about 2 years. And when I first started looking at what career students were favoriting, professional athlete was always #1. So I see it as a little bit of evidence that students are getting exposure to more careers when I see that now our top 5 careers have shifted from just being professional athletes. So I'm pretty excited about that and excited for all the opportunities students are having to explore careers. In addition to exploring, students can set goals. There's a portfolio inside of School Links where they can start to capture all of their strengths. Their academics are automatically pulled in, things like their SAT scores and their years in school. They can, as they start to participate in work-based learning, all of those experiences actually get added into their resume. And there's a one-touch button that I wish existed throughout my life. They can just hit one button and it will turn it into a resume for them. So that builds into a Google document that they can then edit and shift and kind of personalize themselves. Students also can do college exploration. They can look at data specific to them. It will help them see, what type of acceptances from our division occurred at the schools that they're interested in themselves, and really explore all the different aspects of post-secondary education. In addition, students complete their college applications through School Links. Teachers also use this for writing their college recommendations. So as students work from 6th through 12th grade, they'll use different aspects of the program. Additionally, our program of studies, our course list, and our various academic programs, including the Scholar Studios and early college programs. There's information accessible in School Link, so it's a great place for students as well as families to explore. In addition to exploration, students can begin to put together the courses that they're interested in participating in that are aligned with those career goals that they have for themselves. And so students start that in 7th grade, and they do that all the way through 11th grade, where they're able to use the course planner to build out a schedule that both meets graduation requirements and meets their goals for the future. When they have kind of done all of those different pieces and parts, it turns into an academic and career plan. And so the one I'm sharing with you here, this is a sample for a sample student, so it's not real information being shared, but you can see what that sample looks like and how that could be helpful for students as they're going throughout their journey. Of course, this is a sample, and students change their minds daily, weekly, by the minute sometimes. So this is just a tool for planning. Students are welcome at any time to update it and edit it. And one of the most exciting things that I see is when I log into the platform, it's exciting to see students all day, every day throughout the year, kind of updating and editing what their interests are and what their goals are for their future.
Hey, Megan, can I ask a question here? We have a lot of questions, and it's around courses, specifically around dual enrollment, AP, IB classes. Are students in the studios, are they still able to take those types of courses towards an advanced studies diploma, of course, but also those college credit courses?
Yes, that's a great question. So all of the studios are designed to support students on a path to college. They all have college credit courses embedded in their sequences, and they also have opportunities for students to take additional courses. And then, of course, within their core courses, there's opportunities for dual enrollment and AP. The state of Virginia offers many different opportunities for early college programs. 3 of them that are probably the most common, well, probably 4. One is just taking individual courses in an area of interest in AP, IB, or dual enrollment. The second is what's called the Passport program, which is the first kind of 15 credits that you might take that are some of the most commonly transferred courses in Virginia. The third is a 32-week Universal Studies career certificate program, Universal Certificate of General Studies. And the most comprehensive one is the Early College Early Degree program, where students earn a General Studies Associate degree from PVCC, which is 63 credits. With that one, you still are able to participate in the Scholar Studios, but currently the Early College Degree program is offered at Monticello High School.
Great. And related to that, as pathway or as studios fill up, are there capacity constraints? And if so, is there a lottery? We had a few questions about capacity.
Yeah, so at this time, we do not have capacity constraints. It's certainly something that we can talk about in the future, and there's successful models out there that we would study and look into. We know the number of students that are in our division, and so what we can do is shift to meet the needs of students, which is kind of what we've always done. You always look at what are students' interests, what are their goals, how do we create electives and course offerings and programs that meet those goals, and so it's usually more of a how do we adapt to meet the needs and preferences of our students.
Great. And last one related to this section would be school links. So we had a few questions, especially it looks like from some middle school families. When do students gain access to school links? And then when they get that, how do our families get access to school links as well? Or where can they find more information about school links?
Yes. So students start exploring school links in 6th grade. I think for the 6th graders, they do it towards the end of the year. For all of the rest of our students, 7th through 11th grade, and our seniors who are doing their college applications, they actually start using school links in the 1st quarter. So you might have already, if you have a 7th through 12th grader, you very well may have already seen students starting to explore in school links. And students can access their school links login from the For Students page on the Albemarle County School website, and parents can find information about how to get their claim code on the For Families site for Albemarle County Schools.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And I do think it's a great resource and tool that you can use as you're having conversations with your child. And so continue to see that as one of kind of the tools in your toolbox that you have as you're supporting your students over the course of their journey. And then I would say, you know, another really important one is your child's school counselor. And so your school counselor is the person who both knows about all of the programs and available to the student, but also who knows you and your child and is able to really kind of customize a plan that best meets your goals and your students' goals as well.
Great. And for families out there that may be considering some of our other centers like K-Tech or even Community Lab is a different type of school, is there ability to do a studio program within some of those other schools or other centers?
Yes, so all of our K-Tech programs are actually embedded into the studios. So for example, if you're interested in building and construction and want to take part in the Blueprint Studio, then you might choose as your pathway to go into electricity or into building trades. If you're in the Pulse Studio for health and medicine, you might choose to pursue EMT programming or the CNA program at K-Tech. For Community Lab, many of the students in Community Lab participate in the International Baccalaureate program as they get into their upper grades. And so for students who participate in International Baccalaureate, they do have career and technical options, but it's not necessarily the Scholar Studios that are offered at our other sites and centers. What we have found from our Community Lab students is that some of them choose at that point, maybe in 11th or 12th grade, they'd rather go to K-Tech or they'd rather participate in a Scholar Studio. So it kind of becomes a personalized decision for our Community Lab students as they get a little bit older.
Great. I've stopped interrupting you now.
No, this is, I mean, this is great. This is great. It's good to hear what where the key questions are. Let's see, what other questions do we often have? Highlighting the what we hear from students for a minute. As I mentioned, last year was our first year launching the courses, and so this is our second year with students, and it was our first time getting student ambassadors together, which was really exciting. I think I even saw maybe there's a student ambassador family who's joined us today, so thank you for your support and for your amazing students. It's been great to get to know the students and let them begin to kind of shape the future of their studios, as well as to partner with them to help them grow as student leaders. What our students told us, actually I can share this one. Our students really shared what was special about their studios.
And Megan, we'll have to fix the audio. We're not hearing it on our end, I don't think.
Thank you. Sorry about that. We do have some snippets. Oops. We do have some snippets from their voices in quotes. What you'll notice is similar to what we heard from Blaine, kind of what most excites students is that focus, that deep dive into an area of interest. And so regardless of what students' interests are, they really appreciate having a chance to dive deep into that, whether that's STEM or health and medicine or any of our other studios. We also hear from students about the importance of community and being surrounded by other people who are just as passionate as you are, and the opportunity to connect with diverse students from across the county who have those similar goals for the future. Students enjoy both being connected with their expert teachers, but also being connected with experts in the field. This is an example from our Thrive Studio students. Thrive Studio is for mental health and education. This is a great example of being able to connect with students in our preschool and be able to really get some hands-on experiences to see if that's a direction that you would like to go in the future. Most importantly, though, what we hear from students again and again kind of ties back to that data around engagement that we shared at the beginning. What students are really excited about is the hands-on learning, the opportunities to kind of use real equipment and industry tools to be hands-on in their learning. Here, this is some of our Link Studio students in cybersecurity who were able to do a capture the flag competition. I know they have ethical hacking competitions, and actually just this week they've been doing these haunted halls at Link Studio, and it was quite haunting to hear from our cybersecurity students how quickly they can hack into computers, how easy they can break down passwords. So it was the perfect thing to give me chills this week. So hopefully this gives you kind of a sense of some of the different hands-on learning experiences that students are excited about in the different studios. One additional question that often comes up, in addition to the hands-on experiences that students have within their program, they often say, how can I get more experience in the field? What does work-based learning look like? So all of our studios and actually all of our schools offer work-based learning opportunities to students. And we know that work-based learning is one of the things that really can advance equity for opportunity among all of our youth. Having early career experiencing opportunities, research has shown to be more effective at preparing students to enter into high-wage, high-demand employment and into college education. And you can kind of see what this looks like in some of the data. This is from the Virginia Office of Economic Education. And so they've been actually doing an audit of career development and career experiences in the state of Virginia. So if you want to go to VOEE, you can learn more about some of this data. But they've really been looking into kind of two things. What does it look like to participate in career exploring activities and career experiencing activities? And they've seen both of those opportunities actually support students to be more successful post-secondary, but especially the career experiencing opportunities. Some things for you to know when it comes to work-based learning is that industry professionals really feel like when students can get right into the industry, it's the way for them to be the most prepared for the world that's changing so quickly. Our curriculum that is designed by expert educators from the state of Virginia and locally will never be able to keep pace with what's happening in the world today. I was just learning a little bit more about AI the past couple of weeks and how quickly that is shifting our industries. And what we know is that if students are engaging in experiences in industries, they can actually see real time how those changes are affecting the industry even faster than they might from learning in the classroom. The Virginia Council of Presidents of Universities and schools, state colleges here in Virginia have also committed to offering paid internships to every student who wants them without an increasing time to degree. They have also noted how important it is for our college students to make sure that they're getting some career experiencing opportunities as well. The last thing here that's kind of interesting is that employers have indicated that internship experience is their most influential factor that they consider when they're deciding between two otherwise equally qualified job candidates. So we're really looking at how are we building out work-based learning experiences for our students in the studio programs in really a sequential manner that grows over time from 7th grade through 12th grade, but also making sure that all students in Albemarle County schools have access to work-based learning. This fits into that career development K-12 touch point. You can see kind of there at the bottom, making sure that students have an opportunity in middle school and high school to participate in those work-based learning activities. When we talk about work-based learning, a lot of people want more clarity. What does that mean? Does that mean a job? Does that mean an internship? And you can see on the left here in the image that there's actually lots of different experiences that are included in high-quality work-based learning, but all of them kind of have three things in connection. One, they're related to a student's career goals and interests. Two, they do need to be connected to a course. They should be connected to learning. So I think that's the difference between just a part-time job and then work-based learning. So work-based learning is also connected to something the students are learning in school. And then third, it's partnered with our local community businesses and organizations. You can see kind of the data around students participating in work-based learning here in Albemarle County Schools, and really the growth that has taken off last year after kind of a dip from COVID when it was harder for students to be in person in some of those work experiences. You can see where those experiences kind of fall. We have lots of students participating in service learning, students participating in internships and externships, and students participating in clinicals. So what does that actually look like? As you saw, much of our data, students are participating in civic engagement and service learning projects. Those might be community action projects or CAP projects, which many of our government classes at the high schools have. All of our ninth graders participate in a pathway exploration day where they're able to go out on site and visit different local communities, local community partners. Some of our programs, this is Culinary Arts, which is within the Savor Studio, have school-based enterprises where they are actually providing services for our community with their skills. We also have students who participate in Capstone, which is usually a junior or senior year class, and students choose a kind of a area of interest that they'd like to focus on and get more mentorship within that area of interest. That's a little bit about work-based learning.
All right. And we do have a few questions, Dr. Kaiser. Should we go through a few of these that maybe just while we're just talking about this, we have a question. Will scholars get a different diploma, and how will that be evident to colleges that they participated in a studio?
Yes, that's a great question. So the state of Virginia has two diplomas, the standard diploma and the advanced studies diploma. Both diploma options are available to students who participate in the Scholar Studio. So they're not exclusive one way or the other if you're interested in participating in a Scholar Studio. But in terms of how colleges know the difference, each high school and each high school in all of the state of Virginia does something called the school profile. And on the school profile, they list the courses that are available for students to take. They list the programs that are available for students to take with a description. And so colleges receive that information when a student applies. So each of our students, along with their transcripts, colleges are able to look at the school profile and see. So if a student participated in one of the studios, the description of what that program involves, and the work-based learning, the industry credentials, all of that would be connected to that school profile description.
Right. And will that, in your experience or in schools or districts that have run these types of programs, does that help? Does that make students more prepared for college to get into the colleges they want?
Yeah, I think what we have heard from students and families and teachers is that it's the experiences that are more meaningful in helping them reach their post-secondary goals than just kind of a check in the box that I was in the studio or in the academy or a career academy or in a career learning community. So it's really students who are taking advantage of those work-based learning experiences, the industry credentials, the capstone projects. It's really the experiences that they do along the way that really give richness and depth to their resume and to their college applications. And so what we find is when you talk to a student who has been in a program like this, they have so many hands-on experiences and interactions with mentors and collaborations that they've done that they're able to speak to, and that's really what kind of sets them out.
Sorry, I'm going through a few of these questions. And then you touched on it a bit. I know with there's some apprehension from some students leaving their base schools and going to a center and then, trying to feel connected to one or the other. What I know you've been working with students to try to figure out, how to alleviate that as much as possible. But for our families here, what can they expect, or are there some changes or some ways that we're trying to address that issue?
Yes. And I think you're right. It's not necessarily a one size fits all, but it's really helpful to hear the feedback. We have talked to students and families and counselors are often the person that students and families reach out to with some of these questions to help us really get a more nuanced view of how we should design the program. As many of you might know, our academies did used to start in 9th grade. They were a 9th through 12th grade program. And the feedback that we got from the academy model from students and families, that it was a lot of pressure on families to make a decision in 8th grade when students had never even been to high school yet, to really decide which school am I going to commit to for the next 4 years. Again, with the academy model, students didn't shift between 2 schools. They chose one location and that became their base school. So we kind of heard that feedback with regards to the intensity of the commitment for 8th grade families, and pivoted in the other direction, moved the decision back to 9th grade, where students had a chance to kind of get settled and start the program in 10th grade and alternate between the 2 schools. And so what we've found since then, since piloting that last year, is that the pivoting between the 2 schools seems to be a pretty good fit for most students, that they really appreciate having an opportunity to be at a base school with the community that they've grown up with in their feeder pattern, the sports teams that they love, and the friends that they've made over time. And not having to completely give that up has been really important to our students. Some of our students said, if I had to switch schools, I would have never participated in this program. And then the other thing we heard was that actually, if 9th grade was a tough way to start into one of these kind of career learning communities or scholar studios, that 10th grade was actually worse. And so what we heard from students and families was, don't wait until we've already gotten to high school and we've already started elective pathways and sequences to get us started in this type of a model. We'd love to have the opportunity to do that in 9th grade. So that's kind of the direction that we've taken with the Scholar Studios. A couple other aspects kind of to address that. We really are working with our school staff and our school leaders and our school counselors to be more aware of the challenges that remote enrollment students face, so that they can actually feel welcomed and special and a sense of belonging for when they are at the alternate locations. And so many of our school staff and our school leaders have really taken that charge on this year and are really looking into ways that they are making a community with those remote enrolled students. Additionally, there is the option for many of our programs for students to choose to transfer if that's a better fit for them and their family.
Megan, can you talk a little bit about folks on the call are interested in engagement the rest of this semester into next semester for both middle school students as well as high school students about the studios?
Yes, so students will have kind of some of their initial exposure in advisory seminar and in the school counseling presentations. School counselors make presentations to every grade level to share more about the different options that are available to them, including the Scholar Studios. And I'm actually meeting with all of the school counselors this Monday to put some of the resources in their hands so that they're able to both support students and families with the questions that they might have. An additional way that they'll be finding out information is the curriculum showcase nights. So the curriculum showcase nights that happen in early December are in person, and they're usually held in like a cafeteria or a gym, and students can kind of walk around with their families and talk directly to students and teachers to ask questions about the different studio programs, as well as all the other great elective course offerings that we have here in Albemarle County Schools. So we really see that as one of the key ways to connect with students and families. Additionally, the information for all of our electives, there's an online curriculum showcase, and of course the online program of studies. We will be doing several information sessions, both via Zoom and in person over the next couple months. I think next week or the week after, we're meeting with Family Council. We'll be meeting with the Special Education Advisory Council after that. So we'll have kind of a plethora of opportunities where we can be available. But to be honest with you, the counselors, the school counselors and the teacher leaders are usually the ones that families want to talk to, because they have the most information that's specific to a student's interests. So many times families want to know about a specific studio and what are the experiences and what is exciting about that specific studio. And so our teacher leaders and our student ambassadors are really great at answering those types of questions. We will, as I mentioned, we'll be sending out some digital material and some brochures to the 8th and 9th grade families, since most of the programs will be kind of targeted to those age groups. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I think
Yes,
so. And
think so.
related to that, there's a few questions, and I think you just answered it. When will the full course lists be available to our families for the studios?
Yes, so each school releases their course registration on a slightly different timeline. But my understanding is that in general, high schools start opening up their courses at the end of November, early December, and that stays open till about the end of February. And I believe middle schools start early January and also finish up around the end of February. So reach out to your school counselor to find out those exact kind of timelines, but that's the general timeline that you can expect across our division.
And many questions in there for the folks that are in the audience too. If it's a question specific to your student, whether they're a rising 9th grader or a high school student currently, the best source of information, especially about a specific schedule or requirement, would be to reach out to your student's school counselor. They're going to have that specific information, because sometimes course selection is dependent on their graduation requirements and the courses they've taken so far.
That's right. Yes. They are definitely the expert in the division. And the good thing is, you know, they have a caseload of students that they support over time. And so they're able to really concentrate on that caseload of students and their families to make sure that they can fully support them with all of those individualized questions.
Megan, can you talk a little bit about how English language learners and special education students are supported at the studios?
Yes. So our teachers have information to help them identify ways to support students regardless of what their needs might be, whether it's a student who is still learning English or a student who needs accommodation. And so our teachers are usually the kind of like the tier 1 way to address supporting any needs that a student might have. And then as additional interventions are needed, that's kind of layered on top of that in terms of support. And so whether that might be support from a dedicated staff member or consultation from a staff member from our special education team or our English language team, that can look many different ways. We have shared, even in our most recent school board meeting, how important it is for all students to have access to high demand, high wage pathways. And when you look at our students who are still learning English and our students with disabilities, it's even more vital that our students have support to be successful post-secondary, because the data nationally shows that there's higher levels of unemployment, lower levels of college participation, and higher levels of poverty among some of those membership groups. So it's really important that we do what we can to support students to be on track for really successful post-secondary experiences while we have them in our middle schools and high schools. And so we're continuing to look at ways that we can be successful in doing that.
We had a question about how in-depth the studios enable students to take courses and connect with professionals in the field. And an example was given that one of our family members has a student that is interested in sports medicine, which is, part of the health and medicine field. But how in-depth would the studio provide these experiences for students?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so there's flexible options for how students can get to some of their in-depth interests. So for some students that might look like coursework. We do have sports medicine 1 and 2. It's currently only available at one of our schools, and so we are looking to expand that. We know that our athletic trainers are qualified to teach that. And so it's something we're actually looking to expand to have more students involved in sports medicine. The sports medicine class is really pretty intense. It is very in-depth for those of you who are familiar with that field. And so students who take the course go very in-depth in their learning and in their experiences and in the practice. If students choose to take a different series of electives within health and medicine, they could still choose to learn more about sports medicine through the capstone class that all students can take a part of, whether they're in a studio experience or not, by partnering with a mentor in the field. And many of our students choose to do that their junior and their senior year. And so what that might look like in sports medicine is a student going to different locations or one location if they choose to partner with a mentor in the field who they can really learn side by side from. Some of our students do that after school. Others get a release period during the school day, every other day, to kind of engage in that type of learning with a mentor. And the students that I've talked to who do work-based learning experiences really tell me that it helps them to identify what careers are for them and maybe what careers are not for them. I know I was talking to a student who had an opportunity to explore in health and medicine and was wearing the scrubs and really liked the feel of the professionalism in a hospital, and then had an opportunity to explore in accounting, and they liked the accounting, but they did not want to dress up every day. And then when they learned, oh, you can maybe work from home, that gave them more understanding of what those different types of career fields are, even in just something as small as the types of professional attire that fit into those different locations. So I would say that it's flexible, that there are a few different ways that students can engage in the type of learning that's a best fit for them and their schedule.
Are students able to change? Say they start Encore Studio 1 year, and then the next year they decide they want to do Solve Studio. Is that a possibility? Should families worry that students get behind if they're switching studios from 1 year to the next?
So the school counselor is going to be the best person to walk you through any of those individual questions, but we do see students that switch between studios and switch between pathways. You do have graduation requirements, either the standard diploma requirements or the advanced diploma requirements, and our counselors are very adept at talking to your student as they reflect and as they explore throughout their journey to really figure out how best to make sure that the student is able to tap into their interests and meet their graduation requirements. So for many of the studios, if you look at them, there are about 5 classes that are specific to the studio, and only 2 of those are unique to a pathway. The other 3 or 4 experiences are broader across Scholar Studios, so there is quite a bit of adaptability across the programs. At the end of the day, as long as the student meets their graduation requirements, they are able to make those changes from year to year in consultation with their counselor.
Okay, Megan, I think this is probably going to be the last question. We had participant asked about the Encore program, and will that include filming at all?
So we have Vivid and Encore. Those are our two areas that are the visual arts and the performing arts. So Encore includes performing arts. And one of the strands that's available within the performing arts is our audio and visual classes. And I am not the fine arts lead, so I don't want to speak to it incorrectly. I don't know the exact title, but I do know there's an outstanding program at our schools. I know we see productions from our video production team all the time, whether they're recording for our news broadcasts or developing out stories to share and showcase different fields. There's definitely a video broadcasting sequence of courses, and I believe it's a 4-year sequence that would be part of the Encore Studio.
All right. Well, Megan Maynard, we want to thank you so much for providing us this great information about the Scholar Studios. Do you have any final thoughts, anything you want to take to our families as we're closing this session out? And again, we do really appreciate your time this afternoon to share some exciting information for our families about the studios. We're really looking forward to having all of our students engage with this program.
Yeah, we're just excited to have the opportunity. What we know is our families are looking for clarity and awareness and ways to connect their students to the programs that they would be excited about. And so we're excited to have this opportunity today, and we look forward to more opportunities in the future to continue to provide more information and resources so that you can partner with us and partner with your students on their journey. Thanks you all for your time. It's been great connecting with you.
And we appreciate all the families on the call, and we had some great questions this afternoon. However, if you weren't able to get your question answered through the Q&A function, please be sure to email any outstanding questions to the superintendent's office at k12albemarle.org. And we will be sure to get those questions answered. Again, we want to thank you so much. We've run out of time this afternoon, but I want to turn it over before we end the call to Dr. Irizarry to close us out for this event.
No, thank you, Dr. Kaiser. And again, thank you, Megan, for your time today. We're really looking forward to hearing more about our studio program moving forward. And of course, thanks to everyone that was able to make it today. We do try to alternate between evening and midday community information sessions, and we had a great turnout today. So again, thank you for your time. And as always, we have recorded this webinar, and this will be posted on our ACPS YouTube channel for viewing in the future. And we've shared that presentation, and we can put the presentation in the YouTube show links as well. So that way you'll have access to not only the video, but the presentation. And be on the lookout in November. We will be having another community information session, and that will be on our new partner and initiative, Communities and Schools. And that will be hosted by the Albemarle Foundation for Education. So we're looking forward to that. So on that note, we will see you all next time. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a fantastic afternoon.